I saw that Angie was on here, but now she's gone.
Oh, she's still there.
Is she? Okay. I guess I can't see everyone.
Yeah, probably not as they pop on.
Oh, right. Gotcha. I'll have to scroll through.
Carrie, do you have anything that you want to share? Because I can make you co-host. I mean, talking other than verbally.
You are giving me a whole lot of credit there, Cindy. No. Somebody asked me if I had a slide deck, and I had to look up what a slide deck was. I had a good guess, but I am like the one person in America who has not jumped on the whole Zoom bandwagon.
Yeah.
The only things I've really had to use it for, there was one HR thing, and there was like maybe one that I had that way, but otherwise just my college girlfriends wanted to do it. But even with them, I was just like, you know what? I love y'all, but this is not working for me. I am not a Zoom girl. I have the luxury of saying no most of the time. So you guys are very special.
Well, thank you for saying yes. We appreciate it. So it is 11:46, and I am going to go ahead and get things started. I know we'll have some other people pop on because we had about 15 people registered today. So my name is Cindy Miles, and I am the president and CEO here of the Kansas Nonprofit Chamber. And I'm so thrilled to have you all join us today. I'm expecting this to be an exceptional session. I've known Carrie for many years.
No pressure.
And yeah, no pressure. And so I'm really excited to have her today. I do want to start out by having people introduce themselves so we know who all is on the Zoom call today. And I'm going to actually pop over my shoulder because we have a new staff member here today, and I'm going to let her introduce herself really quick, and then we'll get around to everybody else.
Hello, I'm Marissa Miller. I'm the current VISTA program coordinator for KNC, so I'm happy to be here.
Yes, we now have a replacement program coordinator. So we've been trying to manage programming without our programming coordinator for the last couple of months. And let me tell you, that's not my strength. So, and then let's go down here to Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel Mayberry. I'm Senior Director of Public Policy and Communications at HeartSpring.
Thank you, Rachel. Angie? Maybe? Nope, maybe she stepped away. Angela?
Hello, I'm Angela Gahn from the AmeriCorps Vista program at Wichita State. Nice to see you all.
Alex?
Hello, Alex Weeble, communication strategist at DECA. Office is based in Lawrence, but we have offices around the state of Kansas.
Very good. Juliet?
Hello, I'm Juliet Bradley. I'm the Director of Communications for the state of Kansas for the Alzheimer's Association.
Very good. Thank you. Julie?
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
I'm on a different computer than usual. Okay, sorry. I'm Julie Bryn, and I'm actually attending for my volunteer gig, which is the Wichita Alternative Gift Market, but I'm at my day job today, so I might be just a fly on the wall. Thank you.
Thank you. Owen?
Yeah, I'm the Vista Development Coordinator here at the Kansas Nonprofit Chamber, and I'm just sitting a couple rooms away from Cindy. But
Angie, did you come back? Nope. We also over here, looky here, we have Sarah Robinson over there as well. Sarah's our membership coordinator. So, oops, now I hit something on my computer. I should have never done that. All right, so we're going to get started. And Carrie works for the Wichita Eagle. She's been with the Eagle. How many years, Carrie? 10, 5, 3?
Cindy, your concept of time is as bad as mine. It's been almost 20.
I knew it'd been a long
Maybe you
time.
just didn't read the first 10 years. I don't know.
And
right.
I'm just going to turn it over to Carrie and let Carrie tell you more about herself and what she does at the Eagle. And we're going to learn a lot from Carrie. So Carrie, take the floor.
Okay, I will. And y'all, I would really rather make this a conversation than a speech. So please feel free to just holler at any point and interrupt me. I will probably be grateful for it because I have a small little throat thing going on. And so I'm also going to be sucking on my Sonic drink the whole time. So I apologize. I really do. Some of you probably didn't hear me say this to Cindy when I first got on. I really do appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all. And I think that now more than ever, it is crucial to understand how best to work with the media, just because we all know the media landscape has changed, and it's just more important to understand, okay, there's a finite amount of stories this group of people can do. How do I make mine be one of them? So we're going to talk about what I'm going to call the good, the bad, and the ugly of working with the media. And you may have your own stories, but I would say the ugly, again, is that media landscape. I know that all of you have to be aware of just how difficult, particularly the newspaper industry has become. But really television, radio, just every form, whether it's print or online, it's just a different world. And the thing is if I had given this talk even 6 months ago, it would have been different than what it's going to be today. Now, the same general principles are still going to apply, but that's how rapidly things are changing. And just to give you a little understanding, when I joined the Eagle, it was late 2002. I moved to Wichita to be with my future husband, Joe Stump, who was the Eagle's food editor at the time. And at that time, I'm just going to guess, and this number is probably incorrect, but it'll give you an idea. I think the newsroom had approximately 150 people in it at that time. We were located on East Douglas, where Cargill is now. We had a huge building there. Things were so different then. I came in right when we still had, although not for long, like an Eagle mascot, like somebody who was employed to wear an Eagle costume and go to events and meet the public. And now at a time that we have approximately 8 reporters, it's just shocking to even think that that was a mere 20 years ago. My husband was laid off in 2009, March of 2009. And on that same day, I got a 5% pay cut. And they said, hey, that column that you've been writing for the paper, I came here to write a business column called Have You Heard? And they said, that column that you've been doing 3 times a week in the printed paper, we want you to now go online, and it needs to be 5 days a week. And they were like, it's no big deal. Just take what you've been doing over 3 days and spread it over 5 days. Well, not a good day in the Renger Stump household, I might say, but a lot has changed even since then. The news has continued, unfortunately, to diminish in size. And so right now, as far as the reporter, if I had to count actually how many reporters are working in the newsroom today, when I say newsroom, most of us are working from home, a few of us are in the newsroom. The number today would be about 6 people. We have one person who I think is out on a family emergency, another person who's on paternity leave. We do have 2 sports reporters, and I need to quit leaving them out. So technically with them, we would have about 8 people in the newsroom today. But as far as news reporters who cover breaking news, business news, restaurant news, nonprofit news, features, that's all down to basically about 6 people. And then we have 2 editors to edit all that copy. So that's the ugly. That is the ugly truth. It's not what any of us want, and I know that a lot of people have frustrations with the Eagle in general, or our owner McClatchy in specific. But I'm here to tell you that there are a lot of good people both at McClatchy, but especially in our newsroom. We are a collection of Suzanne Perez. I don't know if you guys know her. She used to be with the Eagle for like more than 3 decades. She's at KMUW now and still a great journalist and somebody you should follow. But she used to say, we are missionaries. And it really is. That may be a little self-promoting to say, but we really do feel like we are doing important work that's vital to this community. And it's a group of people who are caught in a difficult situation in a difficult industry. It was an industry that was always difficult. But now, of course, there are some insurmountable challenges. And when I say insurmountable, what I mean is we just can't cover everything. We just have to make peace with that as much as possible. And unfortunately, the public does too. But anyway, I wanted to just make that side note that we really do have a group of people who care. And so when you're dealing with us, that is something to keep in mind. And so if we have to say no, just realize it's not because we think your organization isn't worthy of coverage, that we don't think your story is worthy of coverage. It's just that there are only so many things humanly possible to do. And just as a little side note, one of the things that has changed through the years is reporters themselves basically do everything it takes to get that story online, meaning they write the headline. They also write this thing called the subhead. We have a special SEO head just for online. We have a teaser text that we have to write with every story. We have keywords. We have to type all of that in before we actually even start working on the story. So when some people say, well, I mean, I don't understand why you can't just, this story, how long could it really take you to write? I actually had somebody pressure me a few weeks ago, pressure me and another reporter, and kind of made us feel bad. And we already felt bad having to say no to this story. And I didn't stop to explain all of that to this person, but I wanted you all to understand there are just so many steps just for even getting a story online that there is no just let me spit this out super quick. Everything takes a little bit of time. So that was the ugly. And any questions about the ugly? Any comments? This is your chance to go ahead and complain if you want to. Let me address that. Anyone? Okay.
It sounds pretty ugly, Carrie.
And I'll just say, I know my mom, she initially wanted to be she got a communications degree and wanted to be a newspaper journalist, but she ended up going into television. And so she works at a local TV station. And I think that has been something I've heard her talk about a lot, is like she's talked about how the newspaper has changed a lot.
Yeah, everything
She started her
has.
career there.
Yeah, I'm sure her world has changed a lot as well.
Yes, yeah, it's changed tremendously.
So that was pretty ugly. I admit that was a lot of ugliness to share. And then the bad out of that is, yes, it is much harder to get your stories in the paper. And really probably any news outlet, but I'm speaking, of course, specifically of the paper. But the good is, like I've already said, we really do still want your stories. So now let's talk about how you get your stories in. All right, I've made a little list. All right, first, I don't want to insult anyone by going over the basics, but I'm going to go ahead and do this just in case it helps. The first thing I really would do if I were you is identify who you really should get to know at both our publication and any other media that you deal with. It is crucial to really have a relationship with reporters and editors. So if something happens, whether it's good, bad, whatever, you can read them, first of all. I'm not saying I wouldn't take a call from somebody I don't know. I certainly would, but it's just much easier. Like when I was just upstairs getting ready for this, a mere 15 minutes ago, of course, doing my hair, because of course I'm working from home and hadn't done it. I saw a source ringing me, and he's somebody who has been super invaluable to me. And so I answered it and I said, hey, I'm flat ironing my hair right now, but I'm taking your call because I knew it was you. And you want to have that relationship with whoever it is you're going to be eventually pitching a story to. So if that means maybe just figuring out, okay, who most likely, like, am I going to be doing more feature type stories pitching? You know, do I need to see if I can take Denise Neal to lunch, or am I more business focused? Should I maybe get together with a cup of coffee with Carrie and just get to know her? And I still do that. I really try to do, just because my time is so limited, I really try to do like lunch, just because we all have to eat lunch, or something even late afternoon cocktails or whatever, just because when I'm actually in the working hours, I am just like breakneck pace running to get things done. Because, and this is a good point, I probably should have also told you, one thing that has substantially changed is our deadlines. Most people do not know this, but because of where we're printed in Hutchinson, and because of the printing schedule, we have to go to print at 3 p.m. 3 p.m. So it's ridiculous, and we all hate it, because if something happens at 4, we can't get it in the paper, most likely. I think we have like one little caveat that we can substitute an hour later, like one front page story, but that's it. So essentially, I am done and have my stories in on a good day by no later than 2:30. Now, there have been some days that I've worked right up until 3, which is crazy and scary, but so we just have ridiculous deadlines, and that's something to keep in mind, but we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But so that's where knowing a reporter can come in handy. You know their schedule, you know how they work, you know, do they prefer to get an official press release emailed, or do they want you to call them or text them, or, you know, what is the situation? I will tell you, for me personally, and this is just me, lots of people have different preferences. I would say you don't even ever have to write a press release. All you ever have to do, if you are pitching me specifically, is just shoot me an email. You're welcome. I will give you my number. As a matter of fact, I'll go ahead and do it right now. My work number these days is really my cell phone. So that's 655-7600. And my email, which runs at the end of every one of my stories, is, or at least it should, is C as in Carrie, Rengers, and that's RENGERS at wichitaeagle.com. And I'm sorry, my mail, every time it pops up, makes a noise, but I don't know how to have volume to actually talk to you and get rid of that at the same time. So I apologize. And I do get a lot of emails, as you're probably picking up on. While I'm at it, I'll go ahead and give you the email for our editor. His name is Michael Rohrman. He is a great guy. I always have to type his name in to make sure I'm spelling it correctly. So his name is Michael, and then Rohrman is ROEHRMAN. And his email is mrohrman@wichitaeagle.com. So all of our emails are first initial, last name. So M Rohrman, ROEHRMAN @wichitaeagle.com. So for me, you really don't have to send a press release. You're welcome to, but you can text me, you can call me. I will tell you, it's probably always better to email first if you can. If it's something on a super tight deadline, you are welcome to call first, but you just never know. I might be on a super tight deadline for something else or whatever. It's always better if you can just shoot me a little heads up saying, hey, I've got this story. Are you interested? You know, here's some details. Now, I will tell you, if you are doing a press release, and sometimes there are really good reasons to do a press release. For instance, if you're working with media, like in small communities, like small town newspapers, I have been told by people I cover in business that a lot of those papers, and they should not do this, but a lot of those papers will take directly what you have in the press release and just slap it in the paper. And so then in cases like that, you absolutely should be working to try to get a good press release to them. But no self-respecting reporter is really, and I realize their model is a little different, but in a market like Wichita, nobody should be taking a press release and just slapping it in the paper. The only way I will even write off of a press release is if it's something I have to cover and nobody will talk with me, like if it's a big story. But usually I just get so frustrated if people just say, well, here's our statement. And so then I have to weigh, am I even, you know, is it even worth doing this story or not? But, and again, here, I do not mean to be insulting. This is going to sound so basic, but you just cannot understand how many people screw this up. And, how often it leads to a reporter not doing a story. When you do a press release, the most important thing you can do is include a cell phone and make sure somebody's going to be by that cell phone. I had something happen just this past week where somebody sent me something. They were really hoping for some good coverage, and they said, call so-and-so. Didn't include her number. Just assumed I would have it. Now, in this case, I did happen to have it, but this was a general press release they sent out. So, and I noticed that not any other media covered this story besides me. And I have to think part of it was because they made it so gosh darn hard. Why would you send out a press release without a good number. And when I say a good number, you got to make sure it's the correct number. There's one PR person in town who I would put among the very top PR people in town. Even that person has sent me a release with the wrong number in it that was like 1 digit off. It happens. We're all human. Man, screw up the rest of the press release, but don't screw up that number. And again, make sure whoever's number you're including is going to be able to answer that call. Honest to God, if I had $100 for every time somebody sent me a release, gave me a good number, and then didn't have somebody available to talk, I could retire. And that's ridiculous. Why are you bothering to send out a release if you're not going to be available? I've had people, I've called them about the releases. They're like, oh no, we're not going to be able to talk till Friday. I'm like, why are you wasting my time today then? Now I say that it's awesome if you can reach out to somebody early. That's absolutely something you could do and should do. If you know you have news coming and you get that release together or that email to the reporter, don't wait. Go ahead, send it as soon as you can. If you think, gosh, it'd be really great to have coverage next week, go ahead and contact the reporter this week. Give them time to plan. My world these days is so frenetic and so just like, which fire am I going to put out at this moment? What is the very most important thing I need to be doing? That if somebody contacts me at the last minute and they're like, oh, but the event's happening tomorrow, you've got to get it in the paper today. I might just have to say, and most likely if it's an event, I'm probably not going to be able to cover it anyway, to be honest. But let's say it's something I really want to cover or really think, hey, our readers are going to connect with this. I do need to get it in. If I'm already working on 2 other stories that day that have to get in, there's not much I can do. 2 weeks ago, I was working on a front page story, and I actually want to come back to you and talk to you about that story in a minute, but I was working on a front page story. While I was doing that, another business contacted me and said, we've got this release that's going out. And I said, is it going to all media? And they said, yes. And I was like, I'm doing this other story. I don't know if I can get to it. And the timing was so tight with my 3 o'clock drop dead deadline. So this was probably around lunchtime. And I was like, if other media do this story first, it's going to diminish the news value for me doing it. If I can't get it in time for tomorrow's paper, then, and this is another thing to consider, and my editor would kill me for saying this, but we were coming up on a Friday. And so Friday to Saturday, we don't have a printed edition on Saturday. Now, my editor would be like, yes, but we have this wonderful e-edition and online. And I do think that's great, but I know a number of you are like me and still like, hey, we like that printed edition. So a lot of times I really try to avoid even doing stories on Friday for Saturday, just because of that reason. And my editor, like I said, would kill me. So Michael, if you ever see this tape, I apologize, but that's something to consider as well. So anyway, so here I have this great business story, like both of them were really good business stories. And the one just never even saw print. And I did end up having a conversation with that business person and just said, here was the bind that I was in. And here's what the situation could have been. Your story never was going to be in print. And we do still have a number of print readers. And further, there were actually 2 stories in one. I said, you have 2 really good stories here. And I am having to rush. I am just hoping I can get these people on their cells. I'm hoping I can get something interesting out of them. I'm hoping I can get the art together. I'm hoping I can put together a good story while also still working on this front page story. And I mean, I'm not somebody who gets headaches, and I had such a headache by the end of that whole experience. And I was so angry because in both cases, both of those businesses could have worked with me a little bit earlier, and I could have done a better job for both of them. Now, I think both stories did turn out pretty well. It came at a cost for me, but there was just no no reason for it. So anytime you can give a reporter a little bit of a heads up, it just allows them, if they're able to do a story, to do a better story. They're not rushing and trying to squeeze in between a couple of other things, or just having to tell you flat out no, because gosh, sorry, I have 2 stories for tomorrow. So does every other person literally in the newsroom. And so we just can't do it. Sorry. But if we have a little bit more time, then we have more options. Now, this doesn't mean that we're going to make you happy much of the time. And I hate that. The person who, my colleague and me, feel bad the other day, I know she was trying to guilt us into writing her story. And it's not that I thought her story wasn't worth telling, but these days, we have 2 bars for what makes a story. Gotta take a little drink here. One is the importance of the story. If there is a super important story that needs to be told, and when I say super important, again, I'm not diminishing anybody's story who comes to us with anything, because everything is important to someone or many someones. But when I'm saying important, I'm talking about, is this something that the community has to know about? You know, like, okay, maybe a wastewater story isn't going to get a lot of hits, but this is a crucial story for us to write about. So we need to do it. So we're going to do it regardless. But our second bar is, and it has to be these days, how many people are going to read this story? How much interest is there going to be? And, you know, a lot of journalists have had a very hard time transitioning to this model. We liked how we were doing things before. I liked how we were doing things before. I think it's crucial that we cover everything in the same sort of way that we used to, as far as like cover every school board meeting, cover every city council in depth, every planning commission meeting, everything. I want that, but it's unrealistic, just given staffing, which you all are very familiar with at this point. So, so I have very, very pointedly tried ever since 2009, when my column went online, thinking, okay, what can I do to get the most views of my stories? Now, I don't want to do anything cheap or gimmicky. I don't want people to go, okay, she tricked us. She tricked me into reading this story and it wasn't even all that interesting. I'm not going to fall for that again. I'm not going to read Carrie anymore. I certainly don't want to do anything like that. But I want to look for, okay, what is the interest in this story? Why should or would people care about this story? I kind of use that as my basis. Now, I do stories that aren't necessarily going to be like, okay, 15,000 people just read this story, you know, after I posted it. They're not all that way, but I write enough. I try to do about 2 stories a day on average. I write enough that I'm trying to reach out to different groups and really get a lot of different types of people going, we probably ought to chat with Carrie because she had that story last week that I liked. And okay, I'm not as in this one, but I'm still gonna, you know, keep up with her. So that's my thinking and my goal. What you all need to do, and other than my cell phone tip to you, the very most important thing I think you all should take away from this, and that is you need to think like a journalist. So knowing how I think and I approach a story, you need to think, okay, if I'm going to pitch Carrie or anyone to the Eagle, I need to take a minute and think like they do. To think, can I convince them that this story is of wide importance, that the community really needs to know about this? Or can I think of an angle that is going to make this story more interesting and give Carrie or someone else a reason to write? And what I mean by that is, I'm going to give you an example. And the example was from last Thursday. The Funding Center, which I've written quite a bit about their campaign for their beautiful new Frank Lloyd Wright building they're going to do out east. They wrote me and said, we have a new $1.5 million grant. Kind of went, that's fabulous. Very happy for them. But, I've written a lot about them getting grants and I don't know. I don't know. Do I have? And I talked to my editor and he's like, well, let's look at the numbers on your last few stories that you did about them. And with each one of those stories, I had really tried to think of different angles. And so those stories really did pretty well. And he goes, well, I think they did pretty well. Why don't you go ahead and do it? Well, so I tried, but I couldn't reach the people immediately. So then I was pretty frustrated and I was like, fine, you know what? I'm just going to write the shortest story. It's going to say, here's their $1.5 million grant. I'm going to throw in some information from my past stories and I'm going to call it good. And I'm so glad that's not what ended up happening. What ended up happening is the person I needed to speak did return my call. It was right at 2:00 though. So my story, I had to really, I think I ended up turning that one in about 2:45 that day. So it was tight. But in talking to a human instead of just reading the press release, and I have to say, and I don't mean this against them at all, most press releases are pretty boring. And this one was like most press releases. But in talking to this person, I ended up getting a much better story. They not only had gotten a $1.5 million grant, they unfortunately also were in a new position of having to do a new capital campaign because construction overages were going to cost $1.5 million. So it was a good story, bad story, but it had, a pandemic angle. And I ended up, it was such a good interview, even though it was so quick and again, left me kind of reeling. I said to my editor at 2:45, I know it's kind of late, but I actually think this might be a pretty good front page story. And it made the front page the next day. And so it ended up being a win-win, but it was kind of hard getting there, both just in trying to reach the folks, but also in not realizing there was a bigger, better story there. And so I'm asking you to help me and help every other reporter by doing that work to think, okay, we have a whatever fundraiser coming up. The Eagle's not going to write about this. We just almost are never going to write about something like that anymore. But hey, is there just some, and I'm trying to think what it might be, what a good example might be. Is there just some human twist to it that just makes it an extraordinary story? Is there just some, you have to go, what is that little hook that I can hook that reporter who will then do my story? And I'm so sorry again that most likely a lot of the time the answer is still going to have to be no, even if you get creative. But it's going to be a lot better of a chance if you get creative and think, how can I help this reporter? Another way to get creative is to think both for the Eagle and for other publications, what different avenues you have for getting news in. I will tell you one new avenue, and it's not really new, but it's certainly something we're going to start relying on more, I believe, is our op-ed page. We will take commentaries from Wichitans or people writing about Wichita issues. The other day, somebody contacted me about, I'm not going to say this correctly, and I even read the op-ed piece, but it was about raising money for people in Lebanon. And it was like supporting the Lebanese community here and having them support the community there. And so somebody contacted me and I knew we weren't going to be able to probably do it, but I talked with Michael Rorman and he said, how about an op-ed piece? Now, I didn't realize he just meant they should turn one in and we'll see if it works. I told them they could have an op-ed piece, which fortunately they turned it in and it worked. So I was off the hook. But that's something to consider. Is there something that's important to the community, but maybe doesn't rise to the level of the story, or maybe we just don't have anyone to do a story? Is there somebody in your organization, maybe a well-known person or just somebody, an expert, anyone like that who could write a good piece? And that's a way to get news in. You might also just really try to think, who is my market? for instance, we got a press release. I personally got a press release about a new Parkinson's support group in town. There was probably no time I was ever going to write about a new Parkinson's support group, even knowing it's important. It's a more narrow group of people that it's important to, but I know it's important, but it's just not what I cover, and really probably not what anyone at Eagle covers. But you know what? My husband is now the editor of The Active Age, a publication for people 55 and older. He did a full page story on it, and that was incredible coverage for them, and it was the right market for them. I mean, we could have had it in Eagle and it would have gone to a lot of great people, but it was so super targeted in The Active Age, with people who are older and having Parkinson's. So you need to think along those lines of who should I be approaching? Really, what is our market? And yes, it would be fabulous if you could just send a press release and everybody just did it. But as we all now know, those days are gone. So just try to think along those lines. One other thing that you can do with the Eagle specifically, if you have events, we have an events calendar. Let me just make sure I'm going to tell you the right address. Give me one second. I think it's events.kansas.com, but let me just, yes, it's events.kansas.com. And you can go on there anytime and get your event added to our calendar listing. And people, I think, really do read. I don't know how many, but I think that is also a good option. So if you're having a walk or a picnic or whatever, that's a good place to put something like that. So I'm just talking. Does anybody have any questions so far? I'm kind of hoping so, because
I actually do.
Oh, good. Great.
So again, I'm with the Alzheimer's Association, and I would be very interested to know the approach for the op-ed. I've spoken with Michael before, but I didn't know, is that just something that you would encourage us to send specifically to you or to him, or is there a platform online to do that?
That's a good question. I would just email him directly for now. We don't have an opinion editor right now, but we're going to be hiring one. And when that happens, that would be the person just to email, but there's no official, like, fill out this form or anything like that. I think our op-ed pieces are like, I'm going to say ballpark 500 words or so. Okay. And he could tell you more specifically, but before you write it, you should definitely reach out to him just to say, would you be interested if I put this together, and then see, does it fit? But hopefully he'll be able to give you a pretty good answer so you don't waste your time ahead of time. But it's always worth a try. And I will tell you, Michael is a super great guy, super approachable. And if you ever have any problems, he's always open to talking, or if you're frustrated with coverage, he's always open to, exploring that with you as well. So I just think he's a great advocate for the paper and just very easy to approach for what that's worth.
Yeah, thank you.
Carrie, I have a question. Are there any hot topic or off topic like that people should or shouldn't write about in regards to op-eds? So hot topics or topics that's just like, yeah, we're never going to print that.
I would never say never about anything personally. But, you have to think, okay, what is my nonprofit, or what is whatever it is that I'm promoting? And is this related to that? Is there a reason I should be writing this? Because if you are just like, hey, this is Cindy, and I feel very strongly about blah, 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 I don't know that he's going to be quite as open to that. I mean, he might be, you never know. You can always try him. But as far as, no, I mean, I can't imagine. Michael's extremely open-minded, and I've certainly never been told anything about we'll never cover this, or this is an issue that doesn't matter to us, or anything like that. So, hey, if you've got an idea, go for it. The worst he can say is no. Now, if you sent one every week, he might get a little tired of you, but that's the beauty of email. You know, and if you send it ahead of time and he has the luxury of time that he can write you back. I mean, I have no problem with people doing that with me. And when I have to tell them no, I often wind up telling them, hey, this doesn't mean you shouldn't keep trying me. You know, we'll figure it out one of these days. And a lot of times, and this is also maybe a little hint, something to keep in mind is it is through talking with people, just on the phone with somebody, that I wind up figuring out, oh, I really do have a story. Like I just did a story this morning. This young man in Andover has a tutoring business, not the most exciting business in the world to write about, but I wouldn't turn him down, except he opened it 3 months ago. And I'm like, you're killing me. You know, I want to help you. I want to write about this, but you opened August 1st. It's just too late. And so I'm talking to him. And then pretty soon I realized I actually kind of have a sweet little story about him being an entrepreneur. He was working at his father's business just a couple doors down, thought he was going to take that business over, but his dad wouldn't retire. And he was like, I'm ready to be an entrepreneur right now. And so it ended up being, I mean, not the biggest deal story in the world, but I ended up finding that angle that worked in this case. And plus I just felt bad, you know, that he was a young man and I had to tell him no. And I am a sucker, but I can't always say yes though. And that's why if you just think about those different angles and even just say, hey, Carrie, can we just have a quick 5-minute conversation about this when you have 5 minutes? And let's just talk this through. I am open to that because I would much rather say yes. I would much rather find a good story and I would much rather build that relationship for the future. And, you know, I talked about that at the beginning. It all really does go back to relationships in a place like Wichita. I think it probably is really true anywhere. I'm sure it'd be true if I were a reporter in New York City, but it just is what winds up to, I think, giving better coverage for a business or a nonprofit or a person, and more stories for me and better stories for everyone. So I'm going to look at my little checklist. Any other questions while I'm checking my checklist? I was expecting some tough ones. I'm going to just reiterate this, even though I've already said it. It's just, I think having to rush stories is just ridiculous. And anything you can do to help a reporter not have to rush a story, unless it's truly something that this just happened an hour ago, it's huge, you're going to want to know it. That's a different story. I'm such a rambler. I think I covered almost everything I wanted to. 1 minute. Well, I think that's really mostly what I wanted to say. Are you sure there's no questions? So the key things I would leave you with are cell phone, someone who will answer it, and think like a reporter. If you have those combination of things, I think it's going to increase your chances of getting something covered. I will make a quick note. We are doing something different with our Sunday front cover. I don't know if you all have noticed, but we have devoted, I think it's been about 8 weeks now, the entire front page of our Sunday newspaper to one subject. And we're calling it Reimagine Print. It's something to both simultaneously get people interested in our print product, but also we have lots of little QR codes throughout the stories with links to what we're calling digital assets online. And so like I've done one of these stories so far, and it was on the residential real estate market, and I tried to make it super useful to people. So I included like how to refinance and should you buy a house now, should you sell a house now, all that kind of stuff. So if you, I'm telling you this, just if you have any ideas related to your nonprofits that you think might potentially be something of high user reader interest and utility, that's something you could pitch either to me or Michael. And I'm not always going to be the right person for you to contact, but you are welcome to always contact me, and I will hook you up with whoever the right person is, if there is such a person. But you all are up against a little bit of a tougher challenge than like average business. If a business has an opening or closing, we're going to try to write about that. What you all are doing is something a little bit different. And so, but you know, with a little bit of creativity, hopefully we can still cover some of your news as well, because we absolutely want to. And that's the, I guess the last thing I'd really want to be takeaway is, even though this is a really challenging time for all media and especially for print journalists, we do want your stories. We do want to be the community newspaper for Wichita. We want to be that community resource, and you all are a big part of that. So I want to be able to help you get your stories in. So please don't hesitate to reach out, and I will help you if I can.
Carrie, Rachel has a question.
Oh, okay, sorry. Oh, her hand. I told you I'm not a Zoom girl, so I was like,
Right.
oh, she's waving to me.
High five.
Thank
Yes.
you. I do have a question about making statements and doing that the appropriate way. So in some situations, organizations choose to get ahead of a topic or a situation, and what is released in the press release is all that can be said.
Sure.
In those situations, when a reporter asks for a statement, what do you think is the most appropriate way to handle saying we can't say anything outside of what's in the press release?
That's all you have to say.
Okay.
It really is. I mean, the reporter is going to be disappointed. A good reporter will push you some just
Yes.
to try to see if he or she can get anything else. I have a front page story today, as a matter of fact, about the Wesley Rehab Hospital is going to be closing in March. And I thought it sounded like the CEO was going to give me a little bit more information, but I think in the end, she was told, you're not going to give her any more information. This is our statement. And so she started reading me the statement, and I was like, just go ahead and email it to me, and just so I can make sure I have it for sure. And I wasn't happy with it, and it didn't result in a good story. Hopefully there will be a follow-up where I have more information, but I do understand it. I understand that there's things that I can't possibly even understand about that whole situation, or anytime somebody says, this is all we have, this is our statement. So that's all you have to do is just, and that goes back again to, if you have a relationship with that reporter, maybe they're used to you being able to comment on things. And, you know, if you're on the phone with them, just say, hey, you know, Carrie, this time, sorry, I can't, this is our statement. It is what it is, you know, and it's certainly something that reporters hear on a regular basis. Just be prepared for them to push back a little bit, but, you know, dealing with a reporter, none of it has to be super formal, super complicated. To me, it all comes down to relationships and communication. And sometimes that communication is just saying, this time we can't communicate on it. So, you know, just have conversations. That's all you need to do.
Thank you.
Okay.
Other questions? Because I have another question, Carrie.
Oh, good.
I know I'm always full of questions. So I'm a little bit curious. We have some people on the Zoom call today that might really have some expertise to offer up in certain areas. How do they build those relationships in a way where if you're writing a particular story, you would be willing to reach out to somebody that you knew had expertise? And I know, you know, sometimes Bill Ramsey's known for his IT skills. And I know sometimes you reach out to Bill, but how do we get into those types of positions where you might, you know, somebody might reach out to us from the media to give our expert opinion or whatever?
It's super easy. It all goes back to just building that relationship again, and just flat out telling the reporter. I had somebody who is a PR person for a bank, and she came to me once. She actually came up to our newsroom, and whatever she was giving me, it was nothing I could cover. It was nothing I could use. But I remembered when she said, hey, if you're ever doing any kind of financial stories and need an expert, I'd really like to be able to hook you up with someone. And I remembered that. And I did call somebody for my residential real estate story, actually. And so it's as simple as that. I get emails every single week from people nationally, PR people who are like, if you ever need an expert on this, here it is. And I occasionally save those. Like if it's something that I think realistically I'm going to need, like if I was doing a big retail story or a grocery story, I've kept some of those contacts, but I don't hear from people locally in the same way that I do from people nationally. And I'm certainly open to it. And I know other reporters would be too. Like with you and I, Cindy, we know each other. We already have that relationship. You can
Yes.
just drop me an email and say, hey, you probably haven't met so-and-so, but they are an expert ever. Or if you really feel like there is a further relationship to be built there, go ahead and say, hey, I'd like to meet you, if you have time for lunch, drinks, or breakfast or whatever. And again, I usually go back to saying that only because those are the times that maybe it's a little easier to meet rather than, like people say, well, do you want to come over about 1 o'clock and visit? No, 1 o'clock is prime writing time. I cannot leave this computer. And that's not entirely true, but it's usually true. So I would love to hear about different experts that any of you might have. And what I do is I have a file that I keep all my phone numbers in. And when I hear from somebody about, hey, this would be a good source, I put that person in that file. And I will tell you the time from when that banker said that to me about her source. It was probably 1.5 years had elapsed. But I still remembered it because I'm like, okay, I'm doing a banking story, and not that I didn't have other bankers I could contact, but I bet you all have some experts that I wouldn't even know to think of when doing a story. And so absolutely go ahead and share those.
Thank you. And the other question that I had is in a way similar, but I know when I worked at Butler Community College, one of the things that we would do is reach out to reporters on a certain release, we wanted to get in the media. And part of that was us trying to line up people within our organization or whatever that could also provide quotes and or be interviewed. How important is it for nonprofits to do something similar, just have somebody lined up? Because I know occasionally a reporter would like to interview several other people in relation to that story. And sometimes it's a challenge, I know as well, that you just give them information and say, you can call this person or that person, and this person or that person doesn't want to talk to you.
Right. Well, if I had a nonprofit, or if I worked somewhere like Butler and knew, and I was in a PR type position, or just knew that I was going to be the media contact, I would go ahead and get some folks ready, just that, whether it's your director or your whatever, if you have you have a big event coming up and this is the key point person in that, you might even, just prime them like, hey, maybe you're going to pitch a story to the media. In that case, you definitely need to have your folks ready to go. But I think it's just a good general principle to have people who are ready to talk and to realize most of the time, and this is true regardless of what some people have you believe, most of the time, members of the media are just looking to write a good story. They're not your enemy. They're not looking to catch you in something. The majority, I say the majority, I'm going to say 65 to 75% of what I write, I would consider positive pieces. I'm just trying to get information out. I'm trying to hopefully make it interesting information that people are going to want to read. So it doesn't need to be a big, scary thing. I can't tell you the people who have told me, I was very afraid to talk to you, or I was, you really intimidate me. And I'm like, I'm really very nice. And I will treat the kid opening the new business in Andover a little different than I'm going to treat the mayor of Wichita when I'm interviewing them. Most reporters are not going to try to catch a mom and pop store, doing whatever. I'm going to help somebody along through an interview, but it's good to have folks who are at least a little prepared that, okay, here's some talking points. It's just like having a conversation. You don't need to freak out about going into it. Now, I will say, if I were giving this talk right now to a bunch of politicians, even though there may be a politician among you, it would be people like that, you need to have your ducks in a row. You need to, for the most part, I like to think I'm a pretty decent reporter to those people anyway, but it is going to be a different kind of interview than what I might do if I'm interviewing, someone at a nonprofit. Any other advice I could offer? Or I see that one person has already emailed me while I'm sitting here with an op-ed pitch. Kudos to you.
Any other questions for Carrie? Well, Carrie, thank you so much for not only providing us all this great information today, but providing us your contact information and Michael's as well. And I put that in the chat for those of you who haven't seen that. And hopefully you'll reach out to them and build those relationships. And like I said, I appreciate everybody tuning in today. And Carrie, I'm sure I'll be talking to you sometime soon.
I hope so. And don't forget about events.kansas.com. That's
Yes.
real important for your events. But I really do appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all. And if there's anything you were too shy to ask, you've hopefully got my email now. So just shoot me an email and let's start working on those relationships.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for a great
Thank
You all have a
presentation.
great day.
Bye.
Thank you.